and welcome back for part 3 of our Leo season trilogy that we have here. My name is Amy Moonsong, and today I'm going to be taking you into the inner mysteries of astrology and its connection to the tarot, all related to the sign of Leo. Each different astrological sign has an association to the tarot cards, and when we come to understand this, we're able to start to systemize how we can organize different aspects of ourselves when we're working really intentionally on our spiritual growth. Now, one of the disclaimers that I need to bring up about tarot is that the descriptions I'm going to give you today are based off of my own experiences, my journey with esoteric tarot, my understanding of astrology, and that encapsulates a lot of different types of descriptions in terms of the tarot cards, because there are multitudes of different types of decks. There are multitudes of different types of descriptions for the cards. Not only that, but whether or not you're doing a reading that is for something practical like money and finances, or romance and relationships, or you are doing a reading to look into your own elemental information, or you're wanting to work with the more mystical aspects of the tarot and doing things like spiritual alchemy, you can categorize the different aspects of tarot based on what you specifically want. So it's important for me to share with you that the descriptions I give you today are centered around practical spiritual wisdom that's meant to help you with your personal growth and intuitive development, but that this by no means should be your end all be all. You know, when we talk about a specific card today, that's all that it means, right? There's so many different ways to look at these cards. There's so many different ways to read tarot, whether you're looking at an individual card or you're doing a Celtic cross spread that has a whole bunch of different cards. And everybody has to come to develop their own personal style based on how their intuition starts to respond to their desire to have a relationship with the tarot. And that's the other thing that I think I would want to point out, is one of the reasons why it's so helpful to use tarot when you're exploring the mystical arts and personal development, is that the tarot creates a container within which you're able to have a controlled environment and specifically start to work on specific aspects of yourself. And what I have found in my experience, just as a student and as a teacher of tarot, that if you endeavor to set out to understand certain aspects of the tarot, you will find that there will be synchronicities in your life that start to come together to help you. And you find that everything around you in your life starts to interact with and express whatever part of the tarot you're starting to learn. And this is what can make studying the tarot during a specific astrology sign that's related to the cards you're looking at so potent and so powerful. I have a lot of stories about this kind of thing, where maybe I set out to learn about the Suit of Cups and all of the emotional experiences that start coming in to help me understand, to mirror to me what the realm of emotions really is, have been absolutely incredible. So today we're going to be unpacking the cards related to the sign of Leo, and I'm going to be breaking some things down for you today. And I really, really hope that you enjoy this, because this is really, for me, this is the cream of the crop. This is my favorite part, because I have learned so much, and so much of my development and understanding of spiritual truth, as well as astrology, numerology, Kabbalistic wisdom, Hermetic philosophy, has really cohesed itself as I've applied all of it to the tarot and how it applies to the tarot. So without further ado, let's get started. Now, the tarot and the seasons help us to understand this beautiful overlap that happens between the astrological signs more deeply and how they work to support each other as they unfold throughout the year. As a perfect case in point, the energy of Leo is this creative explosion of your illuminated potential to express who you are. Cancer, as we discussed before and we'll discuss again, supports that expression by giving us the inner stability to feel safe doing that. In the same way, it takes the grounding organization of Virgo to know how to make this Leo light, this creative potential, into a sustainable and serviceable reality in the world. Just like knowing how to use my passion and creativity to make this video. I did all of the work during Leo season, but I had to do a lot of refinement as we made our way into Virgo in order to feel like it was not too much information and also enough information to help you learn with it. So how is it that the tarot does this? How does it create this connection? Well, it's two-sided because it's on one hand a structure that systemizes the astrology wheel, the planets, and the elements into a fully cohesive and connected system of 72 cards that tells the entire story of the human experience through the astrological journey, which can then be isolated into individual cards or groups of cards that help us to identify and work with specific parts of our personal journey when we use them in that way. So to start this journey into the cards associated with Leo, we preface by saying that when we're working with these specific cards, we are working in the realm of the element of fire, and specifically the aspects of fire that bring balance to our ego. Because in Leo, we learn about the power of the self and self-expression, but we're also learning about the power of how to use the self to share our light with others in a way that brings forward love, inspiration, romance, playfulness, and that deep sense of delight and inspiration that creates more, that makes us want to create all the more. And this is the aspect of the ego that brings us into understanding the light of who we are and how beautiful it can be when you allow it to shine for your own enjoyment, but also for the inspiration of others. Because it's just as much about wanting to be seen by others as it is about wanting to recognize yourself for who you are. So there's a very strong emphasis on your ego and how it relates itself to the people around it. And the overall energy of our personal fire focuses on issues having to do with knowing who you are, accessing willpower, and taking action. And this is about knowing what you want, having the focus and drive to get it, and all of the nuances of expressing your own identity and creativity in a world full of other people who are trying to do the same thing in multitudes of different ways. So sometimes in this Leo journey, in this ego journey, what we find is a collision of sorts of egos where it may not naturally be our knowing way to know how to harmoniously all be creatures of ego, which we all are, so long as we are in human bodies, and our ego is what helps us to propel our will to create the amazing things that we're capable of creating. So when we start to see this energy of a unhealthy ego or a overinflated ego or an ego that feels threatened because it's not connected to the heart, we start to see this dark side of the fire element or the shadow expression of the ego. And we call it a shadow not because it's evil, but because it's not aware, it's unilluminated, it's in the dark within its own self. So for every card that we're looking at today, it's important to understand that there's a reversal expression that shows up because there's always two ways that we can be expressing these specific energies of our ego that Leo teaches us about through the tarot. And it really brings home this reality that our choices, our awareness, and our self-control matter a lot in terms of what we create and bring forth. So anytime we have too much of this unhealthy ego, we can see where we can come to think it's all about us all the time. We don't have any room inside of us or outside of us for the others in our lives, and we can be very aggressive and controlling. We can become blinded by our own light, if you will, where there's too much identity to the point that we come to feel like we are all that matters and we are all that is. And we can become tyrannical, if you will. So this can also look like really unrealistic expectations from life or from yourself or from others, and a really deep impatience with the natural process of things. So when the fire is out of balance in this way, we can get really good at sabotaging ourselves and our projects and our creativity, because we lose our connection to the natural grounded cycles that we've talked about in the previous videos about Leo. And when that happens, we simply don't have the patience and don't exercise the intelligence to know when it's the right time to act. Thus, our choices can end up really reflecting a disorganized and frenzied sort of fire expression. Again, if we're looking at the progression, this is where Virgo really, really helps, because if Leo does get a little bit out of control, Virgo tends to bring it more onto the ground level and help you to see what is actually going to work and what isn't going to work, and see where you might need to improve. And just to make the dragon make a little bit of sense here, this idea is that fire that burns uncontrollably consumes and destroys, just like a wildfire or hot lava. You know, these are really good examples of when we have too much of this fire energy. But on the other hand, fire that's controlled and tempered, like the fire over a blacksmith forge or the fire over a cauldron, can be used to combine, to alchemize and purify other elements into new creations that allow us to experience and express life in new ways. And cooking is such a great example, because here we are gathering all of these natural expressions of the sun that are growing up through the earth, and we are finding the correct temperatures, the right type of heat to alter them in just the right way that they taste delectable and combine into something that can, I mean, really, food just creates so much potential in our world. It feeds us, it nourishes us, it's delightful, it's a culture in and of itself, and all of that comes from understanding how to use fire properly, which is really kind of amazing if you think about it. But ultimately what we're getting at here is that fire is meant to give us dominion over our own darkness, our own ignorance, when we learn to use it as a tool of inner illumination. But this requires learning, awareness, and the ability to control that creative urge so that it can be channeled into a physical reality. And the other thing that we want to look at, because we looked at having a little too much ego, is now we're looking at when you don't have enough. We want to understand this as well, because this can be a part of these reversals. When our fire energy is out of balance in the other direction, it starts to look like a lack of willpower, a lack of identity, and a lack of inability to have the courage and confidence to assert yourself internally to your own thoughts, your own feelings, and your own urges, as well as in the outside world when you're encountering other people's thoughts, feelings, and urges. So not having the strong enough ego or sense of self denotes that you're going to be overcome by the will of others, by your own addictions, by your own habits and impulses, or by influences that you are not even able to pick up on, because without that sense of identity, it's really hard to even know the difference between what you want and what the other people around you want. So there's a lack of strength, which becomes a really important thing to take into consideration. And I like the image here because it seemed like the light of this woman's lantern is just sort of being blown away and drawn and scattered around the moon, instead of being able to direct her exactly where she wants to go and to show her what she wants to see. So, having set this stage, we ask the question again, how does the Tarot, an ancient esoteric system for hidden occult knowledge and divination, help us in our practical personal development in terms of this Leo energy, ego, and the fire element? Let's take a look. Now,
don't be overwhelmed by this, first of all, because I do not expect you to understand what you're looking at unless you've already had some exposure to this. But what this is just giving you a concept that there is a very intentional organization here to how tarot and astrology connect. And that's all I really want you to make the connection to right now. But the tarot is a system that intentionally breaks down and separates these predominant archetypes and energies that we encounter in our human experience, making room to express the egoic and passionate part of us in the suit of fire, the emotional intuitive part of us in the suit of wands, sorry, not the suit of fire. The suit of wands represents the suit of fire. The emotional intuitive part of us, which is the suit of cups or the element of water, the consciously thinking part of us, which is the suit of swords and the element of air, and the physical aspect of us, which would be the suit of pentacles, that's the earth element. And then we have this fifth element, or the spiritual energy that propels and underlies all of it, which is expressed by the major arcana, which is the first 21 trump cards of the deck that you generally see coming forward first. So the tarot does this by associating every card and every arcana, be it major, minor, or royal, with either an element, an astrological sign, or a planetary power. And if you learn these associations, you will learn the structure of the tarot faster than any other method I've ever encountered, and you'll also learn the basic astrology very quickly. As a side note, just to give a shout out, this wheel came from esotericmeaning.com, and this person also has his own YouTube channel where he does these really, really deep dives into the esoteric systems of the Thoth Tarot deck, and that can be really, really, really helpful if you're wanting to go really, really deep into the esoteric information. But this is meant to be a little bit more beginner level, but I just wanted to give him a shout out because he is quite remarkable. So getting into these cards, the first one that we want to look at is actually the Sun card. The Sun is the ruler of Leo, and in this case we have a direct association with that card. This card is the card of the Sun, and it also represents the actual Sun. So this is the card of the authentic self. And you always want to look at the major arcana card that represents the planetary ruler of whatever sign you're studying. And so in the sign of Leo, we have that rulership of the Sun, and this card represents the Sun. And believe it or not, that's not usually the case with most tarot cards. This is the only time that you're going to see the card called the Sun, which actually represents the star that it's representing. So the Sun is the third to the last card in the journey of the major arcana. So it's way up there in the progression, and it represents the revealing of the authentic self, or the unveiling of the authentic self. It's a culmination of the experience of understanding the self enough through our journey in life to become truly authentic and true in the way we express who we are, where we're not shading it over, we're not wearing any masks, we are just fully confident and fully expressed and connected to the truth of our hearts. So when you pull the Sun card in a reading, it's always pointing to the power of being authentic. It's pointing to self-awareness, or maybe a need to pay attention to things being fully expressed for what they are. And it represents the end result of the journey of fully exploring and understanding the self to a point that it can shine forth fully in the world. And we've talked a lot about how Leo's the flowering phase of the natural cycle of summer, and that flowering would not be possible without the full exposure to the light of the sun and the intensity with which it's shining in midsummer. And so in the same way, it's this authentic self that's calling us forth as we develop in life. It's the part of us that's drawn towards what we resonate with, what we feel passionate about, and where we want to exist in the world, or how we want to exist. It's that sense of this is me, or this really isn't me, that helps us find our way, because we're all seeking to embody our own personal sun, or our soul's intention and vision for our lives. And we do this by having the courage to continually open up to that energy and allow it to lead us to the right place within us and outside of us. It's just like the seed. that follows the warmth of the sun underground and then continues to reach towards that sun once it breaks the surface. And so too are we seeking to reach what allows us to fully become who we're born with the potential to be. So the next segment we want to look at here is a combination of the Chariot card, the Strength card, and the Hermit. And the reason why is that the Strength card, which is the card of Leo, is the 8th card in the Major Arcana. And it marks the point after which we've established our sense of inner strength through the Chariot, which is the card of Cancer, which is also the zodiac sign that precedes Leo in the summer season, as we spoke about in the last video. But to help you understand how really beautiful this is, you would need to know that the sign of Cancer is ruled by the moon, just like Leo is ruled by the sun. So this is a very important point in the tarot where we come to understand the difference between these two aspects of our own identity, the masculine sun and the feminine moon. Now, the sun and the moon are traditionally representations of the inner and outer self, and the greater power of the moon, which is associated with the goddess, our emotional self-awareness, and our extrasensory perception, is that just as Cancer builds the foundation for Leo to act upon, the moon is revealing to us who we truly are in the inside, so we know how to direct our force in the outside world. Working with the moon is different than working with the sun, because whereas the sun is about what's visible and there to be worked with, the moon is about what's hidden or beneath the surface. So it reveals to us the subconscious parts of us that control us without us even knowing it. And when we work with the moon and establish that sense of inner knowing and boundaries, we're then capable of working with our outer selves and directing that lunar force to work for us consciously, as opposed to working against us subconsciously. And the moral of that story really is that if you don't understand what motivates you, or what kind of hidden or subconscious fears are driving you, then all of the strength that you have ultimately doesn't really belong to you. It's ultimately controlled by your fears when they get triggered. So it's only when we illuminate the hidden shadow within us that we can become truly capable of being authentic and using that power in a conscious and controlled way. Okay. So now we're going to focus solely on the Strength card. And one of the things that I want to mention about the way I have these cards laid out that I didn't bring up in the sun is that what I have here in the center is the traditional Rider-Waite-Smith version of the card. That is the main tarot deck that most tarot readers are going to use as their go-to. It was developed by the Golden Dawn. It's where all of this astrology was systemized in a way that we understand it today. But tarot has evolved a lot, and a lot of different people have come forward and created a lot of different versions of these cards, which I find to be absolutely spectacular. So I had to reference a couple other versions of this card because I'm one of those people that I don't really resonate very much with the Rider-Waite. It's kind of old and outdated, and I appreciate the symbolism for what it is. But I also wanted to be able to give us a little bit more of what the other artwork out there that represents these cards can look like. So when you pull the Strength card in a reading, it's generally going to be drawing your attention to the fact that there's a situation in your life where you're required to assess how you're bringing your strength to a situation, and if that strength is balanced. It's also there to remind you that you have the strength to handle what's happening, and that you need to draw upon your authentic self to find the natural balance that works for you and to insist on that. It can be showing you that you'll need to bring your courage to a situation, and that courage needs to be balanced with love and wisdom. We're given an image of the feminine or lunar aspect of us, taming and calming the masculine, the animal nature, and the ego. When the ego, the fire, the passion, and the sense of self knows that it's connected to the infinite wisdom and flow of the inner self and spirit, it can use its strength with that sense of knowing it's connected and safe in the world. We see the aggression and the violence of our animal nature mature and become wise when we have trust in the spiritual nature of life. We can listen to the earth and follow its flow instead of needing to work against the flow or try to control it, which is what we see so much of today in the world. The earth takes care of us when we're connected to the information and the energy flowing from it to us all of the time. So what we see in this card is a masculine strength, courage, and expression that knows how to use its power wisely instead of being used by others who know how to control that animal nature, or having that aspect of you be out of control, which causes you to be a lot less conscious about how you make choices, how you protect and express yourself, and ultimately how you create everything in your life. So we understand that the Strength card is a combination of inner knowing, divine trust, and the courage to live our physical lives with those things driving us at the center of our heart. So this is really the core center of makes Leo what it is this esoteric awareness of balancing the ego and the spiritual nature of life. So this is all fine and good, and I'm sure that we're all feeling very inspired to go out and find our strength, but it's not always as easy as understanding the concept presented to us by these major arcana cards. One thing that can trip us up a lot in our personal spiritual growth is learning a concept and then going out to try to embody it without really fully understanding what's involved in that process, and going through the initiation of overcoming the egoic part of you that's going to naturally do this in a not very connected way because it hasn't come to that full place of understanding that it is always connected. So this is where the tarot takes us deeper as we step into the minor arcana cards that are associated with Leo. So these minor arcana cards give us these key points of the how it is that we learn to use our strength in this way. It gives us the key energy to be aware of, and you can think of them as initiations one must encounter and balance before one can trust that they've understood what true strength really is, as well as the authentic expression of the self. So the three cards associated with Leo, or with the Strength card, I would say, are the 5, the 6, and the 7 of Wands. And every fire sign in the zodiac will have supportive cards from the suit of Wands and the minor arcana, because the suit of Wands is associated with the fire element. If we were looking at a zodiac sign that was a water sign, then all of the supportive cards would be coming from the suit of Cups and so on. So the first card here is the 5 of Wands, and the 5 of Wands teaches us about competition, because Leo wants to express, it wants to be seen and heard, and when we're not in our full strength, we can easily resort to needing to be better than others, to talk over them, or to beat them down so that we can be on top. And here you see a struggle that could break out into a fight, but it doesn't truly need to in order for everyone to be heard and to have their moment. So in these early stages of Leo energy, this is the key element that we must learn, and that's how to understand that you can strive to be seen for who you are and express your light without having to undermine or extinguish the light of others. In the world that we live in, you can see how easily this happens, even when we have the best intentions, because we feel we need to outdo others so we can be seen, so we can get the job, so we can get the part, whatever it is. If we have connected to the light of the sun and we have grounded that light into the energy of the Strength card, then we can compete without fear. We can do it in a friendly way that's about sharing expression and making room for others to do the same, which begins to actually bleed into the 6 of Wands. But this is really knowing that there's enough light, there's enough room for everybody to express themselves. But sometimes it does mean that we need to maneuver ourselves a little bit, or listen to what's going on around us, or just become aware of what's going on. But when you pull the Five of Wands in a reading, it's letting you know that there's an energy of competitiveness in a situation that might be yours or another, and you're being reminded to draw on the wisdom of the Sun card and the Strength card to keep yourself free of the entanglements of that lower ego energy so that you can keep rising to your true potential without having to outdo someone else or becoming subject to feeling outdone by another when you're still in the process. And it can also represent an internal competitiveness, right? Like, you know, your mind and your heart might be competing with each other in a choice that needs to be made, and you're going to need to help those energies come to terms with each other before you make the choice, so that you can make the choice that's in alignment with your true self. And if you see this card in reverse, it's letting you know that the lower ego has gotten the better of someone in a situation like this, and it's time to recenter yourself towards that authenticity and truth strength so you can get back into your illuminated pathway. Now, where the key energy of the Five is about competition, in the Six of Wands, we're dealing with the energy of the achieving or the success of a goal. And when we learn to navigate the energy of the Five, we become capable of truly understanding what it means to win or succeed in any situation without it having to be about outdoing somebody else in the process, right? The number 6 is always a number of harmonization and union between the higher and lower form of anything. So in the Six of Wands, we see a fusion, this actual fusion between the physical expression or the ego, the Leo self, and the source that calls it forth, which we know now is the sun. So when we are in union with the truth of who we are, our creativity and our energy work in harmony with knowing that it's always connected to the source of who we are and that abundant flow of spiritual wisdom, creativity, and source energy. This removes fear and doubt, it keeps us centered, and it allows us not only to succeed, but to share that success with others. So this can look like situations where things just fall so naturally into place, and you can trust the people around you to support your growth as you do the same for them. And when you pull this card in a reading, it represents your ability to bring your best self forth and create success in any endeavor. It also lets you know that you might be sharing that spotlight with other people, as we often create even more success when we put our creative hearts together and celebrate what we're all capable of doing. Because in this world, there is an unconscious message that there just isn't enough, and that we're cut off from knowing who we are, and that we have to fight to get what we want or to keep what we have, and we have to find somebody else to show us the way. But when you tap into the Six of Wands, you tap into the most beautiful aspects of self-recognition and self-love that moves from a place of knowing you're never alone, that you're always led and guided by the truth in your heart. And if you stay in that center within you, you can enjoy success and victory without it going to your head or getting blinded by your own light. And when you see the reverse of the Six of Wands, you see this become more of a prideful success, more again of that competitive success. I need to win, I'm better than everybody else, and I am the best, blah, blah, blah sort of thing, which would then just require you to take a look at, are you connected to your heart? Why are you really doing this? Like, what are your intentions here? Are you wanting to shine your light, or are you just wanting to be the best that there is? So moving forward to the Seven of Wands, it's important numerologically to point out that the number 7 usually brings a challenge. And that challenge generally promises a new level of awareness in the meeting of the challenge. And in the Five of Wands, we learn how to not let competition become a battle, but that's not to say that there won't come a time when we need to know how to dig our heels in and not compromise, not give in and not let go of what we know is right in a situation. And that time is expressed in the Seven of Wands. So if you observe the progression of understanding how to manage competition and then success, you can see that we now have the wisdom and the balance to know when the warrior inside of us is required. And you'll notice, though, from this card that the warrior is not advancing towards those who wish to attack him. He's simply holding his ground, which is a very important lesson in how we maintain our energy when we do find ourselves in opposition. And it's easy to underestimate the power of knowing who you are, what you stand for, and what you want in life. But without these things clearly understood and recognized, your ability to make choices that support who you are and withstand direct opposition from those who wish to change us or stop us from being who we are, or just plain old challenges and obstacles that life like throws at us, that ability becomes unstable at best because we don't have that confidence to push forward. And we can herald back to what we learned about Cancer energy as the stage and structure that Leo can express itself on. Because the Seven of Wands speaks to this by reminding us that if our footing isn't strong in the world, if we're not grounded in who we are, then our creative energy will frequently be hijacked by the desires of others or by our own self-doubt. So it takes strength, confidence, and courage to withstand direct opposition, but there are times for each of us when we must do so. It's always important to remember that this card could be referencing an inner struggle where you make choices, when you make choices for positive change and growth, you may come up against shadow aspects of who you are that will try to sabotage you because those parts of you are not ready to step beyond their comfort zone, right? And this could be when we're dealing in the realm of the moon and what we can't see. But again, we need to know how to work with that lunar energy in order to root these parts of us out so we can strengthen them and heal them. But the truth is that this is a lifelong process. And for all of the times that we have not yet achieved that level of clarity, we must know how to exercise the will not to allow these parts of us to stop us from growing and standing firm in what we know is best for us or a situation. And the reward of the Seven of Wands is knowing that you are capable of protecting yourself and what matters to you in this world. And that awareness will renew the strength of your confidence and courage and your capacity as a creator when we do not turn away from the necessary fight. So if you were looking at the reversal of 7, you really would be seeing a weakness or an inability to do this. This would be backing down from the fight, letting somebody overtake you. And that would again require you to come back to your strength.
I hope that you enjoyed receiving this information as much as I enjoyed sharing it with you. And in closing, I'd like to give you a couple practical tips on how you can take this information forward and make it more of a reality in your life in terms of knowing that you now have some tools and some key marker points that can help you identify how you deal with competition, how you deal with success, and how you deal with having to stand your ground, as well as your authentic self and balancing your ego and your spiritual nature. And the first tip that I want to give you is that you will be amazed at how helpful it is to keep a journal. And I like to be able to maybe even have a journal for each one of my elements. So maybe you have a journal or a notebook that's dedicated to your fire energy. And that as you learn this information, that you start documenting for yourself what your relationship to these energies actually is. And being able to understand yourself. This is putting the Sun card into practice. Being able to recognize how you're showing up in these situations in your life, how you're making your choices, what your courage actually looks like. Even if you find that you don't have a whole lot of courage, that's nothing to worry about, because now you have the information to start to build on how you can bring that out of yourself, how you can recognize if you are in sort of a reversal in any one of these energies. And there's nothing wrong with that. Every single one of us in life finds that we have areas that we could strengthen in order to become more powerful creators or more loving beings, whether it's being loving towards ourselves or being loving towards others or the world around us. So if you start a practice of journaling, I can't recommend that enough. The second thing I would recommend is if one of these cards specifically resonates with you, either in a way that it resonates with you and you find that you are really having a good relationship with one of the cards, or it resonates with you in the way that it's triggered you because you realize that it's something that you struggle with, or it's something that you're afraid that you struggle with. People tend to be afraid of these reverse energies because our ego really doesn't want to acknowledge when who we are and how we show up doesn't measure up to the idea that we have about ourselves. But I can definitely tell you from the perspective of spiritual growth, it's a very powerful practice to identify and love and nurture the parts of you that are not showing up the way that you wish that they would, instead of trying to pretend and wearing that Leo mask, right? That mask that's not willing to acknowledge where you struggle is one of those lower shadow expressions of Leo. So being able to pull those cards out of a deck, the ones that maybe it's the 5 of Wands, maybe it's competition and you really have a thing with that and you really have to be the best, and you struggle when people around you succeed and you have a hard time being okay with that because you just think about how much you haven't accomplished. Take that card out and put it in a place in your environment. If you have an altar, which is something that we haven't really talked about yet, place it on your altar. Any space that you can dedicate to contemplation, meditation, and just a sacred space that represents your personal growth. And spend a little bit of time every day contemplate. Maybe at the beginning of the day, you spend some time setting your intention of how you want to be able to handle that kind of energy, and then spend some time at the end of the day reviewing how you did. And that's where you would be journaling, setting that intention, and then writing down what actually happens. If you're able to do something like this over the course of especially 2 weeks, you're going to be amazed at what you start to notice. This also gives you the opportunity to start documenting the synchronicities that are going to show up in your life, because you're intentionally calling these energies in and you are intentionally trying to work with them. So in terms of intuitive development, recognizing how psychic you actually are and the way that life is interacting with you on a spiritual level all starts to reveal itself when you start writing it down and documenting it. And as we get further into Virgo season, you're going to understand the value of this, because that's when we start looking at Mercury. We start looking at the power of our words, the power of our thoughts, and our power to create with that. So this is all just flowing and very supportive towards what we're going to be looking at in this next season that we've actually already gone into at the time that I'm doing this video. So I hope that these are some helpful tips for you. I do personal tarot tutoring, coaching, and if you need support with this, I can help you to create your own practice. I'm also always available for personal readings if you are just wanting to gain insight from what I know about how to do this in a way that helps you to have the right kind of mirror to see what it is that you need to see to continue on in your growth process. It was my pleasure to be here with you today, and I look forward to next time. Thank you so much.